What's going on? What's going on, everybody out there? It's Ron Brown, LMT, the People's Fitness Professional, aka Soul Brother #1, reporting for duty. I am here with the brother Cosmo L, and we're going to talk about the Moorish science temple and how it functions. This is extremely, very, 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 extremely, very, whatever, important to me because this is something that I can look at, the Constitution and bylaws and the additional laws and figure that out on my own somewhat. So I'm just not completely clear on how it goes. You hear things from different temples, different Moors, and some Moors, see it one way, some Moors see it another way. So I want to, get how you see it now. Okay, so I'm going to just go with the general question before we go into the Constitution and bylaws and things like that. So Moorish science, the Moorish science temple, I want to ask first, the Moorish science temple was created for the upliftment of fallen humanity, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, that is the summarized version, right? Do you have anything else that you can add on to that?
All right. Well, I like to rise high, giving perfect praise to Allah, give honor to my illustrious and illustrious forefathers, the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, Noble Jew Ali. We give honor to the honorable, credit to the credible, peace and good peace and goodwill to all humanity. I want to again thank you for bringing me on to your broadcast to talk to your viewers about this particular subject, which is a much needed subject to speak on these days. As you said, there's various measures. We say measures or portions of understanding. So I believe it's like you said, or I understand it's like you said, in our 101 questions for Moorish Americans. It says, for what purpose was the Moorish Science Temple of America founded? And it says, for the purpose of uplifting fallen humanity.
Right.
This is the base purpose. This is the purpose. However, how we do that is, I think, what we'll be unraveling today, which is in our Constitution and bylaws and other, our Circle 7 Koran and other documents that go a little bit more in depth.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So uplifting fallen humanity is the primary goal. Now, when we say uplifting fallen humanity, some may say fallen humanity is the woman.
Fallen humanity is the what?
The woman.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So would you say that is correct?
Islam.
Okay.
Well, no nation can rise higher than their woman. And so that is one of the, I like to look at things in layers of understanding, not absolutes, because there's many layers of understanding.
Right.
And one of them, if you look on the front of the questionnaire, the 101 questions for Moorish Americans, I don't know if they can see that. You'll see Prophet Noble Jew Ali holding a woman.
Right.
And on her is written humanity. All right. It's written humanity. But then you also notice a little baby bump, right? She perhaps may be pregnant. So being that our nation fell. And the nation is always symbolic of the woman, because without the woman, there is no nation. Even in Arabic, the word for nation is and the word for mother is So they're pretty much the same thing. But it's not just limited to the woman. It's limited to the woman and her offspring and those who have fallen out of the constitutional fold and out of the fold of the family of nations by accepting chattel terms such as Negro, Black, Colored, Ethiopian, so on and so forth. So it is the woman, because the woman is the nexus or the origin of the bloodline, but it's not limited to just the definition of the woman.
Okay. That's peace. Now, let's go into how it functions. If you can kind of like give me a general idea, and then we could like just to summarize like a picture of how it's supposed to function in a temple.
All right. Well, I would like to employ the words of Prophet Noble Drew Ali from the Moorish literature booklet. Um, in the Moorish Leader's Great Historic Message to America, we don't have audio tapes or videotapes of Prophet Noble Drew Ali, but we do have writings of his and writings that were authorized by him from the Moorish guides, so on and so forth. So I just want to read this couple of brief paragraphs right here. And it says, in connection with the aims and objectives, rules, and regulations of the Moorish Science Temple of America, I deem it proper to submit a brief statement of our organization covering its inception, rise, and progress of the Mohammedan religion, which I hope will be satisfactory to you and be a means of causing you at all times to adhere to the principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice in our relations with mankind in general. I further most anxiously hope that this brief statement will help you to clearly see your duty and wisdom of at all times upholding these fundamental principles which are desired for our civilization and of our prosperity, such as obedience to law, respect, loyalty to government, tolerance, and unity. And so in these two brief paragraphs, it says a lot. And he set out to clarify, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but he set out to clarify the purpose of the Moorish Science Temple of America beyond what we're talking about, beyond just fallen humanity. And so it says, we organized as the Moorish Temple of Science in the year 1925 and were legally incorporated as a civic organization under the laws of the state of Illinois. November 29th, 1926. The name of the Moorish Science Temple was changed to the Moorish Temple of Science was changed to the Moorish Science Temple of America in 1928.
Excuse
In
me. I
accordance,
don't mean to cut you off. I don't mean to cut
yeah,
you off.
uh-huh,
But what did you just the last thing you just said, right? What,
uh-huh,
this is in Moorish literature right here?
yes. It's in
Okay.
the Moorish Leaders Historic Message to America. So, first, it incorporated as a civic organization in 1925 under the Moorish Temple of Science. And then it was changed in 1928 in accordance with the legal requirements of the Secretary of State of Illinois to the Moorish Science Temple of America. The objective of our organization is to help in the great program of uplifting fallen humanity and to teach those things necessary to make our members better citizens. Now, this is important. A national organization with a Rotarian complexion as it relates to branch temples became obvious with the increasing number of inquiries from men and women in different sections of the country concerning the purpose of our organization. There are branch temples in 15 different states at this time, and this is the last paragraph I'll read. Since the work of the Moorish Science Temple of America was largely religious, the religious organization has been legally changed. Hi, how you doing?
What are you reading?
I'm on a live right here teaching. You're welcome to listen though, however. Since the work of the Moorish Science Temple of America was largely religious, the organization has been legally changed to a religious corporation and the affidavit filed properly in Cook County, so on and so forth. So the Moorish Science Temple of America was primarily to teach people to become better people, to be better citizens. How you doing? And it says that it had a Rotarian complexion. Most people might be familiar with the Rotary Club, and which it teaches ethics and community service. All right, peace. Thank you. Peace. Bye bye. uh, it had its purpose was similar to the purpose of more science of uplifting fallen humanity, but Rotarian complexion, the complexion meaning that it has a character similar to that, which means that there's national characteristics, national standards, national ethics that are shared by all the various branch temples and auxiliaries across the nation, so that you would be able to go to any Moorish Science Temple of America and receive basically the same standard of character, ethics, and teachings. That's the Rotarian aspect of it.
Gotcha.
However, as we'll see later on, there is ability for temples to be different. And that comes from some laws that are in our Circle 7. A lot of people think each temple has to be an exact replica of the other temple, and that's just not how Prophet Noble Drew Ali laid it out.
Right. So let's go into where I see that. And it says, okay, so Act 1 in the Divine Constitution and Bylaws says the Grand Sheik and the chairman of the Moorish Science Temple of America is empowered to make law and enforce law with the assistance of the Prophet and the grand body of the Moorish Science Temple of America. The assistant Grand Sheik is the assistant. The assistant Grand Sheik is to assist the Grand Sheik in all affairs if he lives according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. And it is known before the members of the Moorish Science Temple of America. So, just as you said, right? This is how I would draw it up, right? So, the Grand Sheik and the chairman of the Moorish Science Temple is empowered to make law, right? So, just from that alone, they can make law in their own temple however they see fit, but it has to go in accordance with love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. And of course, it has to go along with the grand body of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Okay.
Islam, and we can even get a little more clarity when we go to our Circle 7, because a lot of times you do have sheiks that would say, yes, we can make law however we want to make law, as long as it's with the assistance of the Prophet and the grand body. But notice the key where it says the assistant Grand Sheik is to assist the Grand Sheik in all affairs if he live according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. So there's a clause there. You have to be living according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice in order for your assistant Grand Sheik or your grand body or anybody else to obey the laws and to obey that position. That's a criteria. And unfortunately, sometimes that seems to get lost in undying loyalty and support for a Grand Sheik, but not realizing that, hey, if they're not living according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. So let's go to chapter 47 in our Circle 7 Quran.
I don't mean to cut you off. I don't mean to cut your flow. Chapter 47. Chapter 47, Circle 7. Okay, we're going to get there, right? But before we get there, right, I want to go into living according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. How can you tell, or how are you able to tell if the person is living through love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice?
Islam, there are, number one, it's just basically living a righteous life. And there are more laws in the general laws and supreme laws that either we can go into or say for another time that outline what a Moorish leader should be like, right? What a Moorish leader should be, how a Moorish leader should teach, what's a good Moor, what's a bad Moor. These things are all outlined in other documents. However, I think by reading this chapter here, it'll bring a little more light. Chapter 47, key 12, or Holy Instruction 12, it says, these holy and divine laws are from the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, founder of the uniting of the Moorish Science Temple of America. These laws are to be strictly preserved by all members of all temples of the Moorish Science Temple of America, that they will learn to open their meetings and guide it according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Now, every subordinate temple of the Grand Major Temple is to form under the covenant of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, and create their own laws and customs in conjunction with the laws of the Holy Prophet and the Grand Temple. I, the Prophet, Noble Jew Ali, was sent by great God Allah to warn the Asiatics of America to repent from their sinful ways before the great and lawful day. So in this key, we find that the way that you measure whether the laws that the Grand Sheik and chairman are is producing is based on if it's in conjunction with the prophet's laws. So whatever laws that are going to be created, there has to be some, it has to be traced to the prophet. There has to be some provision inside the either the Circle 7 or Divine Constitution and Bylaws, general laws, additional laws, to trace that law back to. And this is one of the ways that you can tell that a Grand Sheik is demonstrating according to the law, because otherwise, if Moors would just be able to create any type of thing, and a Grand Sheik would just have ultimate power to say whatever. So you have to trace it back to a provision of the prophet in order for one to know, all right, this Grand Sheik is legitimately passing laws according to our custom. So for those that want to understand more about that, they should look into conjunctive law and customary law, because this is what we're dealing with here: laws and customs in conjunction. And so the deeper Moors study conjunctive law and customary law, then they'll be able to see if a Grand Sheik is on point, so to speak. The next aspect of that is we can go back to our Circle 7. I mean, excuse me, our Divine Constitution and Bylaws. In Act 3, it tells us love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice must be proclaimed and practiced by all members of the Moorish Science Temple of America. No member is to put in danger or accuse falsely his brother or sister on any occasion at all that may cause harm to his or her brother or sister, because Allah is love. So does he falsely accuse, right? Are his actions based on love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice? Then you can go to Act 7, where it says, it tells you all members must pay their dues, must promptly attend their meetings, and specifically the husband part. Husband, you must support your wife and children. So is he supporting his wife and his children if he has a wife and a child? So all through the laws there, they don't just apply to members, but they apply to Grand Sheiks are also members. And so by looking at a person's demonstration of the prophet's laws, you can tell if they're living according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice.
Right. Okay. All right. All right. Now, to go into Act 1, can you go in depth on Act 1?
Yes. So again, it goes back to the making and enforcing of law. In order to understand that, we have to understand what law we're talking about. The law that we're talking about is a couple of things, but the root of it is divine law, right? Divine law within our society. We can't go out and make a law for someone outside of our society to follow. All right, that's the first thing. Now, there's three types of divine law, and if you look it up in Black's dictionary, which Moors like to use, there's other dictionaries, but since Moors like to use that one, I'll refer to that. There's three types of divine law. Number one, and I'm not saying this in the order of importance, but number one, there's natural law. Many people are familiar with natural law. These are the laws just by virtue of being born, inalienable rights, so to speak, inalienable laws. Then there's divine law, which is revealed law, whereas the prophet says we have the Holy Koran as the word of God, direct revelation. Most prophets have a revelation that they use, either it's revealed to them or it's revealed to previous prophets, and they follow these laws as a guideline for how they set up a prophetic government. Mm-hmm. And then the last and most important, which applies to the Grand Sheik in Act 1, is positive law. Positive law is when when someone in a position such as a Grand Sheik or some other type of divine position makes a ruling on a particular issue. And that particular ruling then becomes law, similar to case law in a civic arena. So positive law is the type of law that the Grand Sheik is executing based on the divine law, which is why it has to be in conjunction with the prophet and the grand body, because the grand body has allowed the Grand Sheik to be a sovereign in a sense over them and to hold this position. And so there's checks and balances in place. So the ruling comes from the Grand Sheik, it becomes law. If the grand body is with it, it does. If the grand body is not with it, it doesn't necessarily mean that it can't still be law, but there's opportunity now for debate and conversation to try to make it a little bit more reasonable, if that's the case, in order to make it more beneficial for the members. So positive law is the type of law which is a form of divine law, but it's a ruling based on revealed law or natural law.
Check. I gotta go over that again and write stuff down. All right. So now the law that you were talking about, right? Like you broke down, you know, different types of laws. Make law and enforce laws with the assistance of the prophet in the grand body of the Moorish Science Temple of America. So this may be a crazy question, but
Mm-hmm.
I have to ask it. This was written when the prophet was alive.
Mm-hmm.
He's not alive anymore, right? So make law and enforce laws with the assistance of the prophet. So how do you make laws and enforce laws with the assistance of the prophet if the prophet is no longer here? Unless you just use
Islam.
its words, Islam.
That's a great question. The prophet is alive on the soul plane, but I'm not going to get into no spooky stuff. It's what we the assistance of the prophet are the laws that he left, right? Because he set up a prophetic and divine government. So when you need assistance from the prophet, you consult your constitution and bylaws. You consult your general laws. You consult your supreme laws. You consult your additional laws. You consult the laws that are in our Circle 7 Koran. And again, you make sure that whatever you're doing is in conjunction with that, based on conjunctive law. So it's not as if the prophet is not here in a physical sense. He's on the soul plane. We all go on to the soul plane, and we know according to chapter 1, man is a spirit and a thought of Allah, and as long as Allah lives, man cannot die. So in our teachings, we don't say that the prophet is dead, but some people may take that to think that we are consulting with a spirit. Not to say that you can't, because there are spiritual, there are mysticism to all teachings. However, in this case, it's referring to the laws that the prophet left, because what the prophet did was he set up a prophetic government. He set up a divine government. He set it in motion, and then he appointed grand sheiks to carry out the and other officers to carry out the functions of that government. So whenever we need assistance from the prophet, it's what he left.
Okay. Now, don't you think that now, okay, that great explanation. I get it. But I think that's where things kind of get tricky because now it's left for interpretation,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
It's
people say the prophet said this, the prophet said that, and because the prophet did this or said this, I'm doing it this way.
mm-hmm.
You see?
Well, it's just like any other law. I mean, to take the laws of the United States for example, the framers of the Constitution are not here, but you have judges, a Supreme Court, which is put in place to interpret the law. And you have various courts that interpret the law, and you have various lawyers that interpret the law. So, uh, some laws are really straightforward. They're not in need for interpretation. And I think that's where a lot of the confusion comes in, because sometimes you have people interpreting things which uh, law is more, it's not so much interpretation. Like if I'm reading a spiritual text, then there's room for interpretation because there's layers of meaning. But when I'm
Mhm.
dealing with law, I'm not using an interpretation. I'm using what is known as juristic reasoning. See, each officer has a jurisdiction. The root word in jurisdiction is juris. So if you're a jurist, then that means number one, you're learned in the law. And then number two, to arrive at rulings, you use juristic reasoning. And so it's not so much interpretation. When people start interpreting, interpretations are for spiritual matters, to look into the essence of, well, what does love mean? You know, what does truth mean? What does it mean to use the axe, to use the hammer? These things can be interpreted in many forms and ways. But when it says that you are to create your own laws and customs in conjunction, see, this is the key. And again, it goes back to conjunctive law, because conjunctive law has rules. All right. So in conjunction mean it has to align with a law or a custom that already previously exists, either from the prophet or through our customs and usages. So, and then it has to also uh, be within the standard of standard English. You can't just take words out of context and expect someone to who actually knows English and knows how the English language works, and have anybody accept anything. So the conjunctive law, the assistance of the prophet, and the grand body are again checks and balances that are put in place so that a grand sheik cannot run amok, or a grand sheik and chairman cannot run amok.
Okay, that is peace. All right, great answer. So the grand body. Okay, how does the grand body work? So
Mhm.
like, I don't understand the grand body, right? Being a part of the movement, my main objective was to uplift fallen humanity. I wasn't thinking about like the grand body, nothing like that. I was thinking about uplifting myself first, and then the community around me. So I wasn't really
Mhm.
thinking too much about, yeah, who is the grand body actually. And
Islam. Yeah.
okay, mhm.
No,
So
go ahead if you have some
so
more to say.
does a grand body act like the Congress and American government?
Islam.
Islam.
Um, I wouldn't really mirror the civic government with the religious government, or divine government, I should say. But what I will say is that the Grand Sheik is like the executive, because they're making the law, right?
Mhm.
Um, the Grand Body would be more like the Senate, and/or House of Representatives, because they have different functions in say the U.S. But it's the Grand Body of sheiks. And so you have grand sheiks, you have sheiks, and so all of these ones who are appointed now have the ability to review laws and to have their input. And it's important because, say for example, when you have conventions, and you have a lot of different bodies these days. It's not just one body. You have various bodies, and so you have various conventions. But whenever, say, one comes to a convention per se, this is where it's, say if you have 7 temples and you're having a convention with 7 temples, it's important to have the grand body's input, because each environment a lot of times requires different things. There are nuances, and because each grand sheik has the ability to make law and enforce law, when we come together, whether it be a grand body or a council, to create laws that might cover all of the body, it's important that everyone has, or all of the sheiks have input. And in some cases, even the members, members are where we come from, are able to petition and able to have some input in things that affect them as well. And they're represented through their body of sheiks. So this is pretty much how the grand body works. Say, for example, and I've had to have grand body meetings where someone may disagree with the ruling that I put down, and we call the grand body together and we meet, and the grand body would deliberate until there was some type of resolution to it, and then that would be the standard at that point.
Okay. So from my understanding, you're not able to the members. So that was my main concern. That was my main concern for a while. Like, the members, why aren't the members in power at all to even vote? That was my main concern. Do you have anything to say about that?
Islam, again, it goes back to creating your own laws and customs. In some temples, uh, members aren't allowed to vote. However, uh, in some temples, members are able to form committees, and they're able to again present fact findings and things to their body of sheiks, which would then take it. So it's almost like a referendum in a sense. They have a say so, and then it goes through their sheik, and then their sheik takes it to the grand body, and then the grand body, basically decides on that. And so in some temples and ours, members are involved. How they're involved is based on how the prophet laid it down, and customs that we can create to help members be more involved. Because all members are active and not passive. So a member is not a passive position, but their involvement and their activism is not the same as an officer or an administrator. Just like in any society, in the United States, members can have petitions and can write lists and create referendum and ballot measures that are then taken to be voted on. So there's still room for members to be involved. And I doubt very seriously whether they can vote in some of these other temples or not, that their voice is just totally silent. I know some members, and they're not gonna they're gonna be heard, one way or another. So, and that's where it's important for the Grand Sheiks and the body to not just be caught up in the position, but to be worried about the welfare. If you I could go to another lesson in here, and I'm not gonna, but magistrate and subject is in the there's a lesson in the Circle 7 known as magistrate and subject, and it outlines how a magistrate, or how someone in a position of being able to give rulings, what they should do, and how they should do it, and the spirit in which they should do it, and how they should uh, not admire the title as much as they should what the title can do for society.
Indeed. Hold on. Got to do that right there. Drop a bomb. All right. So there's a question here. We got the brother AB the Light, Abin Bay. How many temples do we have across the states?
I don't know the exact number. There are temples forming all the time. What I would say is that there's 4 major, say, grand bodies. If I were to calculate, you have maybe about 25 temples under one, maybe 15 under another, maybe another 15. So, I mean, you have over 100 temples. However, the Prophet Noble Ali, before he passed, had only set aside 15 temples at the time where he wrote the Moorish leader's historic message to America. So it's important that all of the temples that form are traced back and have a genealogy to the temples that are set aside by the Prophet Noble Jew Ali, and or in these days and times, Grand Sheiks that may not necessarily be with those temples, but may have come out of those temples and have formed their covenant under love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Whether that be due to discrepancies of how things were being ran, or however that formed, they have the opportunity to form government and incorporate into the Moorish Science Temple of America under Chapter 47, Key 12. But they have to have a genealogy.
Okay, so 4 grand bodies, correct?
Roughly, because you have the grand body that came out of the the Gibbons Ill grand body, and then you have the grand body that was under Braswell Bay now, Temple number 1. Then you have the Emily Ill grand body, and you've had other variations from there, the Ink, R. Jones Bay. These are, in a sense, you know fractures or divisions within the movement. But again, the Prophet allowed for that. So it's not for me to come and say, hey, you're doing this or you're doing that. Only thing I look at is, are you tracing what your actions and what you're doing back to the Prophet? There are a lot of people who are fighting over the divisions of which one is the original temple and which one can be traced back. But this is a very important thing I like to tell them. It doesn't matter, and it matters in a historical sense, that you should be able to trace yourself back to the original temple. However, what if the original temple is wicked? Then what?
Oh,
And I'm not
okay.
saying that the original temple, I'm not saying the original temple is wicked, but what I'm saying is, just because something is original doesn't mean that that's the litmus test for it to be the one to follow. You have to look at the works of these temples, and there are good works coming out of all the temples these days in different areas, despite what some might claim, to set themselves up to be the sole one that everyone should follow. But you look at the works. If the fruit doesn't fall far from the tree. So if there are good works coming out from the temple, then that's what's most important. And how is it benefiting the members? Are the members being taken care of? Are the members benefiting? Are their children? Are they protected? Are they unmolested from other citizens and from big government and other societies? These are the things that are most important. But from a historical standpoint, there is a root, and there are divisions from that root.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, this is a great question. This was a question I was going to ask. Thank you for coming out. Rush 24 Fit. How do you know which temple to go to? Oh, yeah. You said you just answered that already. You just answered that. You just answered that. Okay.
Well, to give a little more commentary on that is, number one, you do your research. You do your research again into the works of the temple and see if that is right for you. The sheep know the sound of their shepherd's voice. So not all temples are going to resonate with everyone, and that it's not designed to be that way. It's designed to have a Rotarian complexion if Moors are demonstrating right, meaning that no matter what temple you're from, you should be able to go rotate with other temples and still perform your duties as a member and as a good Moorish Muslim. However, look into the temples and see if the temples are right for you. Are they teaching? And I'll say this: it's just like when in the Christian church, study to show yourself approved. That's what we used to say. don't just take what the Grand Sheik says or what the preacher says out of the Bible or any other document. Read for yourself. And if something's not lining up and you have some questions, then ask some questions. If someone is upset about you asking questions, then maybe that's not the place for you. You want to go where you can ask questions, you can get an understanding, and most importantly, you can be at peace. And I've been to some temples that when I've walked in and the ethers were very dark,
Mm.
and I would say, hey, who's gonna want to be a part of this, and then I've been to temples that are very vibrant, and you can not only feel the light, but you could see the light. And so we're gonna be attracted to love. If there's love at that temple, then that's a good temple. If there's no love in that temple, then naturally one is going to recoil from that.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Now, there's another question here. What is the criteria to open a temple?
Islam. Well, again, the criteria is it depends. Some people believe that it's you have to be given a charter in order to open a temple, and this is simply not the case. Number one, it tells you every subordinate temple in Key 14 of the Grand Major Temple is to form under the covenant of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, create their own laws and customs in conjunction. All right. So remember, you have to have a genealogy. There has to be an appointment of a Grand Sheik that actually comes from a temple. You can't just jump up and do this, right? I mean, you can, but in order to have that connection, you have to have a genealogy of an appointment. And then when we go to chapter 48, it tells us that uh, we go to key 4, any subordinate temple that desires to receive a charter. So that means you can have a subordinate temple without a charter. You can either desire to have one or you cannot have one.
Mm-hmm.
So the myth that you have to have a charter is not the case. So some are under charters. You're given a charter and commissioned from another temple. Others are appointed Grand Sheiks and prefer to create a subordinate temple without a charter. Both of these are valid. And but again, the key is having an appointment, having your appointment papers from a body that can directly trace themselves back to the prophet through a Grand Sheik, or mainly through a Grand Sheik or a Supreme Grand Sheik or something of that nature. So it starts with an appointment. You have to, and the reason why is because it says you have to. These laws are to be strictly preserved, that they will learn to open their meetings and guide it according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. So you have to learn how to open your meetings. You have to learn how to guide the meetings according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. You have to learn of the laws and the customs, because this is what you're going to be duty bound to uphold. And you have a lot of, not a lot, but you have some people who have open Moorish organizations and temples, and they don't teach out of the Circle 7. They don't use the Constitution and bylaws. They don't use general laws. They don't use supreme laws. And so they're maybe in the spirit of Moorish science, but it's not going to have that Rotarian complexion, and it's not going to have the same result. Some Moors think the prophet didn't finish it, and that is their job to finish it. But if they were to study the laws, they would see that everything they're trying to achieve, there's a provision for them to do that, and it is finished. It's already been laid out. And if we honor our forefathers and what we were left, like every other people do, then we would be able to achieve greater unity, greater success, and greater upliftment of fallen humanity for our people.
Islam. All right. Now, I have a couple great ideas for the grand body, brother. They are in accordance with the prophet's words and suggestions. How do I go about connecting with as many temples, if not all, to build on it?
Well, the first thing I would ask is if the brother is a part of a temple. Um, because that's the first requirement. Uh, Imagine, let's just and I'm just going to use this example. Uh, because a lot of brothers are gleaning and studying from the outside. There's a lot of information out there right now, where you can get all of these documents and you can read and you can study and you can have great ideas that will actually benefit the movement. And this is true. But what I want to read is something that the prophet wrote in uh, Moorish literature, and this is why I say that is one a part of a temple. It's called the Voice of the Prophet. And it says, if you have race pride and love your race, join the Moorish Science Temple of America and become part of this divine movement. Then you will have the power to redeem your race because you will know who you are and who your forefathers were. Because where there is unity, there is strength. Together we stand, divided we fall. Come, good people, because I, the prophet, sent to redeem this nation from mental slavery, which you have now, need every one of you who think that you can better your condition. This is a field open to strong men and women to uplift the nation and take their place in the affairs of men. So uh, it's not just enough to have the knowledge, even though they're great ideas, but you have to take your place in the affairs of men. Especially if you want to contribute to the administrative level of government in the Moorish Science Temple of America. Imagine someone who is not a member coming to, let's put it in terms of employment. Let's say someone who is not in management of McDonald's, and they say, hey, I have some good ideas on how you should run McDonald's. You know, the board is going to be like, well, who are you? Well, we understand that these are great ideas, but why don't you come through the process and become a part of this so that you can implement these ideas properly. And so but you can just contact temples and talk to people, but it's important to join. The prophet said, if you have race pride, join. And so we need to join and take our place in the affairs of men as a body politic and under political unity to actually effectuate change, especially within the Moorish Science Temple of America. I demonstrated under the Minister of Culture for a while until I accepted a Grand Sheik position, because as much criticism that I had with certain aspects of the temple, I realized that a lot of people just abandon the temple when they see that there's some issues and things going on. But I realized, hey, I need to be a part of this so that my voice and my ideas and measure and understanding can resonate, and the good ideas that I have will have an opportunity to be heard, not only by my body, but by others who are willing to listen.
Gotcha. Indeed, indeed. Great answer. Great answer. We have a few minutes left before we cut out.
Mm-hmm.
I want to continue doing the Moorish Science Temple and how it functions. We should do a part 2 and keep building on this, because I think this is a very important piece that people don't really understand.
Mm-hmm.
Especially myself. And you clarified a lot this evening. So I don't know if okay, we have would the Moorish Science Temple of America be incorporated into the said government?
Would it be?
Would the Moorish Science Temple of America be incorporated into the said government? So I guess he's
The
asking if the
so
501c3 question. I think that's what that is.
all right, so let's understand a couple of things here. We have to understand what Prophet Noble Drew Ali founded. Number one, and when we look on the back of the 101s, because it says our work was largely religious and it was incorporated, a lot of people like to think that it's just like every other religious organization, and it's not. Because the statute chapter 32 and 36, which is on the back of the questionnaire, one should read that, because in that it tells you that once this affidavit, and this is not the actual affidavit, it's an abstract of the affidavit, but once this affidavit, a legal abstract, once this affidavit was filed, and when you read her statute, it tells you it actually became a body politic. And it's important to understand what a body politic is. If you look up synonyms for body politic, you'll get things like nation, state, res publica, commonwealth. You even get electorate. And so the powers of the most religious organizations are not body politics. So what he did in choosing this statute to create this body politic, when you look up, can religious organizations govern themselves? It's going to say no. But when you look up, can body politics govern themselves? It's going to say yes. So he imbued the Moorish Science Temple of America with the power of self-government of all of those who belong to the society. So first we have to understand which comes first, the society or the organization. Obviously, the society comes before the organization, and the society doesn't incorporate. An organization is created to act as a jural entity. So the Jural Society, Moorish Science Temple of America, is founded on the laws of the Holy Koran of the Moorish Science Temple of America and the laws of the Holy Koran of Mecca. Uh, the societal laws are in here. In order, but it's a because it's a religious society, it can't interact in other ways and in certain ways with the other society that is church is separate from state. So there's an entity that is now created, the Moorish Science Temple of America, which becomes the jural entity of the Jural Society, the religious Jural Society. This jural entity that was created is the body politic, which has self-governing powers and can be likened unto a state or a commonwealth or a res publica. And so it's part and parcel of the said government, but the society never incorporates. A entity is created through incorporation to now carry out governmental functions, uh, and also to act as a third party between our society and the other society. And let me give you a classic example. In the case when COVID happened, and the citizens of the United States were all had to take COVID shots, and they were coerced into taking COVID shots. And if they did not take these COVID shots, a lot of people were fired, and there were, you couldn't go into buildings, you were penalized. And because you were a citizen, they had the right, and because you're a subject, not just a citizen, but subject, they had the right to enforce this on you. They could enforce this mandate on you. But with the Moorish Science Temple of America being a third party and under the freedom of the exercise clause of the Constitution of the United States, Moorish Science Temple of America could exempt all of its members from having to do that. So because we're governed under our religious law of Islamism, and so since church is separate from state, civic law cannot enforce onto religious law or divine law. I'll say divine law because Moors have a lot of problem with religion, but divine law. So it's the divine law of our society that enables us, yes, we're citizens of the USA. It says it on the back of our car, but we're not subject. We're not subject to whatever the United States of America throws at us because we have protections under our law. And then we have our jural entity to enforce that law via Grand Sheiks and other officer or Grand Sheik and chairman to create positive law for us to justify the actions of our members not participating in the other laws from the civic side that come into contradiction with our religious beliefs, aims, and objectives. So the entity is incorporated, but the society is not, and we have to understand that. And if I may, one last thing: there's two authorities on the back of this. And so we just had an authority day, which was celebrated July 20th. I say power and authority day because this is when the meeting was held, the meeting to establish this, and it was held, and it tells you that our power and authority came from the great Koran of Muhammad. That's an example of the society self-starting and doing what it needs to do without any authorization from anyone except the great Koran of Muhammad. However, August 1st, the Juro entity was created and incorporated through her statute. And so now this is the authority of the entity to act as a state, so to speak, to interact with other states, or to act as a government to interact with other governments. Now, I know I said a lot, but I'll stop there. I hope that brings some clarity.
Islam. Thank you for coming out this evening. I really appreciate you for showing up this evening, and for the people in the chat, thank you for watching. Peace to y'all, Islam, to all the Moors. Peace to all the 5% Nation. Peace to everyone watching. All the human families on the planet Earth, all of humanity. I don't mean to be so quick to get off, but I have another podcast right now in like 4 minutes. Thank you, brother Cosmo L. Really appreciate you.
Appreciate
Islam,
you, brother.
I want to come back not next week, but the following week for part 2, how the temple functions, how the organization, how the movement functions.
Islam, I trust we meet again. Peace and love.
Peace.